So I had another idea today. It's super new. I haven't had a lot of chance to think about this, but I was thinking that I do believe that one of the things that we need as a species is to expedite the mechanisms through which more innovation can be had. So we have more focus on the industries of the future. Uh, I think we're in a transitionary kind of phase where the old is getting replaced with the new. So you can kind of look at it from a bunch of different angles. But uh, I do believe that the cycles of creative destruction are necessary. In a Shumterian, I don't know how to say that name. I think it was Shumter who categorized the term creative destruction. And every time there's change, there's always resistance because a lot of time has been invested. A lot of time has been invested when it comes to the development of platforms and systems through which things function. And I'm one of those individuals who are kind of like a Richard Tafel kind of a sense that you have to embrace the status quo in order to be able to bring about change. Because reason and rational thought and well, those two mindsets would necessitate that we need growth in an enlightened fashion, going back to industries of the future. Uh, and to do that, one of the things we need to do is to mature the industries, the sciences, and the technologies that we will benefit from, as well future generations will have a platform through which the continuity of civilization can happen. Uh, that being said, my idea is I think so. Two of the areas that I identified last year that I believe are absolutely crucial for our species and all the species that share this planet with us is one is the opening up of the frontier, as in the frontier of space, because I really believe that a lot of cycles of abundance are tied in with the opening up of the frontier, communications, uh, energy, maybe even food production, mining, uh, colonies of the future, making life interplanetary, which is Elon Musk's vision. I completely, I've been a big proponent. I've been following individuals like Robert Zubrin. I haven't read their books. Craig Venter, Peter Diamandis, uh, and others. I've read some science fiction, not too much, but like a lot of these things are beginning to happen. Like science fiction is turning into reality in a Visioneers slash Patrick McRae. That's a really good book, by the way. Kind of a format. So whatever was happening in the '60s, the limits movement kind of slowed it down, I guess. It's not an excuse. I think we didn't focus on it as much, but I think we needed cycles of innovation in the world of bits so that a a new cycle of innovation in the world of atoms could be augmented by technologies like software in a Mark Andreessen kind of sense and AI, IoT, robotics, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, genomics, and other sciences, material sciences, and a lot more. So, uh, that being said, my idea is, I was thinking this. When I was a kid, there used to be, I think there still is, an alliance of um, uh, airlines, and it's called the Star Alliance. I think it's still there. Um, so I was just thinking, I've always looked up to the U.S. Air Force. I think it's a very uh, respectable, uh, amazing institution. I've always looked up to other institutions that, through the process design and the design of their uh, organization, there's always more innovation in these areas versus everything else that's going on. There's no bloatware, there's no tenure, there's no uh, hundreds of thousands of people involved. It's just pure innovation. I'm not discounting everything else that happens. I'm talking about innovation here. So please don't take my words out of context. I'm grateful for living in a part of the world that's secure. I don't take my security for granted. I understand. I realize that there's an enormous amount of work that needs to happen in order to be able to power these realities. But this idea is about innovation. And going back to two thoughts that I've categorized as most important for a species. One is the opening up the frontier, and the other one is to enable a reality through which a positive singularity happens. So this one is more in the first camp when it relates to opening up the frontier so we can create more pies and that a world of abundance is the reality, which I sincerely believe will help fix a lot of problems so we can tackle some of the mid to long term problems. And we really need to focus on those problems. So coming back to the idea and back to Star Alliance, I was thinking, what if all the institutions around the world, like DARPA and U.S. Air Force, and I'm sure there are others around the world who are pushing innovation from a bunch of different angles. I was thinking, what if there was an alliance that was specifically focused on opening up of the frontier? So you could call it you could call it the Star Alliance, but it's like, or you could call it the Frontier Alliance, or you could, I don't know, like we could do you could call it something else, but it would basically be a collection of institutions that are focused on enabling a reality through which the frontier opens up for exploration, scientific discovery and inquiry, colonization, commercial uses, and tourism. And there's a whole diverse set and range of activities that can come about once the frontier opens up. So how would this happen? I think a portion of the budgets that are allocated for defense should be directed towards the opening of the frontier. I don't know how much money will be required, and it's important to factor in how the money is to be spent. So I'm a really, really big proponent of the DARPA kind of model, where you have DARPA's budget is not too huge, but the innovations that come out of the institutions are unbelievable. And the cycle continues. My intuitive sense is that, again, the process design and the lack of tenure, you're there for like, I think I should know this, I think 18 months to 2 years. Actually, I think it's less than 18 months or 18 months. That's it. One term, you're out. Whatever you have to do it there. Just give it everything you've got. And so what could happen is, here's how it would work. So you would incentivize growth in a lot of different areas. That would be one model. And then you would have a model where areas that were not identified, that's where the growth will happen. And these models will have certain outcomes. These outcomes will be predetermined in an X price kind of a fashion. So you'd say we want, say like if the area identified as space tourism, and the requirement is to expedite the mechanism through which graphene is mass produced using a finite amount of energy. So you do an X price or you do some kind of a price for that, and teams would compete, and once the computer went to sleep. Once the outcome is met, then you kind of mix and merge different outcomes in order to be able to usher the reality, which in this case would be that you want scalable outputs for graphene that can be leveraged in space. So you kind of shoot like raw materials from the surface, like a John Hunter space gun or something, and then you just kind of manufacture it in space. Exponential manufacturing, as it's called. So that would be just one example. And what would happen is, so DARPA's got these models in place. I picked this up from reading one of the articles on Wired magazine. And what this model does is, I think it's for cancer research in this particular domain. But what this model does is, it goes and reads the scientific journals and picks up what the research suggests, and then it takes and synthesizes the information and creates the models in order to be able to test the hypothesis. So all of this is happening automatically. It leads to a big question about the importance of funding basic research continually, because it powers everything. And so what would then happen is, because this is an alliance, you would have the metrics and objectives set, and you would just have a rotation of people and teams coming in, working on these problems, cross collaboration across institutions, across nation states, and it will be a great way of channeling energy for positive, transformative purposes, for collaboration and looking up at the stars. The words of Carl Sagan: civilizations either become spacefaring or they become extinct, or they go extinct. So this is just an idea for kind of like shifting the perceptions a little and kind of focusing up in an Oscar Wilde kind of a sense. Just idea just hit me when I was out for a walk. Like I said, it's very fresh, and if we, often I kind of think, like, imagine if we connect, like, so many like amazing innovations happen every day, and so many groundbreaking groundbreaking breakthroughs can happen every day, and I think if we can somehow learn to collaborate as a species, then we can expedite the mechanism through which a world of abundance can be had for all. And if we really do that, then we have created a much better version of reality for our species in this dimension of space-time. I'm not saying we're going to have unbelievable abundance for everyone within 10 years, but we can create a reality through which the basics are covered for everyone in a sustainable manner. And then we can, and we should, focus on the mid to long term risks so that we can guarantee our own security and continuity as a species. I'm not going to talk about models because the conversation is going to become longer, but this is just a raw idea about different parts of the military, intelligence, corporations, network of startups collaborate across nation states in order to open up the frontier. It's a really simple idea. And if we do that, then within 10, 15 years, the very nature of our system starts to change. The very nature of our society starts to change. Because if everyone can be equipped with a laptop or a tablet or some kind of a computation device, and information is being beamed from space, you have a satellite, like 50 feet wide. It doesn't have to be that big, but you have a slightly wider kind of or bigger satellite beaming broadband internet from space, and you got like 4,000 of these satellites in orbit, then you have like internet being beamed from space for a very small amount of money. So the price of broadband internet from space would plummet. It would become like pennies for a day, and everyone should be able to access it, considering the rise of GDP per capita across the world as more and more time passes by. It remains to be seen if energy can also be beamed from space. Definitely, crops can be grown in space. You just need a shielding mechanism. I've been tracking some of these things. I have no doubt in my mind that a mechanism to be able to send more and more weight into space and bring it back very efficiently will be devised. And once that happens, we're going to break free of this shackle of this notion of scarcity that is a construct of our mind, and will continually start enabling steps towards a world of abundance. So this is my idea for incorporating some of these models in order to be able to enable a world of abundance. In order to be able to open up the frontier. I sincerely believe this is a very important, one of the most important tasks for a species. And if we do this right, then this becomes one of the core platforms for our species. And I want to go to Mars, and I want to colonize Venus. I'm looking at technology every day that makes these kind of realities possible. But also mining facilities and bringing the raw materials back in to Earth, other planets. Having a redundancy for our species, because the last dominant species got wiped out by a single rock 60 million years ago, or 60 to 66 million years ago. So we got to work on all these things, and collaboration is important. I'm thinking of neurophysiological correlates of trustworthiness at the back of my mind. I kind of suspect, let me think about this. I do suspect we're going towards a world of radical transparency. I don't know when that's going to be enabled, but it's all a question of computation. And if computers, by virtue of their design, keep getting miniaturized, whether you want to talk about Moore's law or not, I think there's a whole bunch of ways computation could be enabled, should be enabled. But if we are going towards a world of radical transparency, then what is the point of all this waste and arguments and back and forth bullshit? He said, she said, being stuck in these mental models. Just a waste of time at the expense of our future. So I don't want to finish on this negative note. It's not a negative note. It's just, I think that's what we're seeing in it's some spectrum of or construct, specifically when it relates to politics and governance. I don't think that's sustainable. The focus needs to be on the industries of the future, because only by ensuring and expediting the cycles of innovation can we ensure that a standard of living is maintained or improved across the board. And if we're not going to find efficiencies in all the different systems that we use, then I don't know what's going to happen. If you look at the smartphone, it's replaced, like there's a picture on the internet where the smartphone has replaced like 50 or 60 appliances that used to be used back in the days. Same with the computer. Like imagine like everyone using typewriters or scrolls today. Like you can't do that sustainably with 7 billion people. Food itself, most of the food is grown using genetic engineering, and something that's known as the Haber-Bosch principle. And there's some individuals who are obviously are against the usage of some of these technologies, but the criticism has to be grounded in reason. So I'm not going to get into the conversation about different points of views and um, who's right, who's wrong. I I suspect I'm one of those individuals who kind of I suspect that the nature of reality could be grounded in information in a John Archibald Wheeler slash I think Conrad Zusi was one of the proponents of this theory as well, and uh, I forget the last name of this guy, Edward. He's been researching this for the past couple of decades. I suspect the nature of one of the fundamental, like you kind of go beyond. This is getting too abstract at this point, but like atom quarks, muons, kind of keep going. There's a proposition that string theory is like everything is composed of strings, but is it all information? That's a good question. Uh, but if it's all information, then we just need to be able to expedite some of the sciences and some of the tools, computation systems, in order to be able to create uh, newer and better information models on a macro level, also on a micro level, and that would ensure that we benefit from everything that's coming next. So, conversation kind of went off in a bunch of different directions. The idea is really simple: that a certain portion of the budgets are allocated towards enabling the frontier, the opening up of the frontier, and an alliance can be forged across nation states, societies, cultures, in order to be able to usher this reality. And if we do that, then everyone will benefit. Thank you for your time. Live long and prosper. Thanks.